effect on the students at all, and then the next said like it had a humongous effect, so that was interesting too.
Yeah, conflicting research is very common, and that's why you'll find a lot of times when you read a literature review, it's not unusual for the writer of a lit review to say, you know, in one study they found blah 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 blah. On the other hand, somebody else showed this. You know, and you kind of look at it and go, wow, which one is right? Well, they're both right. They both did the studies, and they conflict one another. And you're just being very honest in the lit review, saying it's the evidence is inconclusive here. We've heard both sides of the argument. So yeah, it's interesting. Jim?
I'm looking at the relationship between extracurricular activities and students and their motivation. And something interesting I found, like, student athletes or people who are in, band or orchestra, and something I found was that it can actually negatively impact, not as much, but like if there's a student is committed to work or they have, family obligations they need to do, that tends to prioritize itself over school, or a school that requires, a certain GPA to be in a sport. Students might just do just enough to hit the bare minimum, but then don't care about exceeding themselves in that area, so they just get, a 1.8 GPA to play basketball and don't care about actually getting a grade in class.
I'm actually researching how hands-on learning and engaging learning like that can improve students' learning in math. I wanted to go towards the math route just because it's easy to do hands-on learning within science, but to do all the experiments and stuff like that, so I wanted to kind of go towards the math to challenge myself more. So I just kind of want to see how that affects, can they learn the material better if they are using their hands and doing activities and being engaged like that. And it's actually surprising to me because it's a lot harder to find resources than I thought, because I figured that was kind of just something that I feel like I just figured there would be more articles and more research on that already, but it's actually difficult to find some good stuff that's actually in a math classroom specifically. So,
Who's your advisor?
Cheryl.
Sure. Thank you.
So I am looking into reflective journaling in either a math or science classroom, and I just kind of want to see how students think that it either benefits them or just kind of how it impacts their learning. And something that I've had a lot of trouble finding research that exactly aligns with what I want to do, because a lot of it is for college level students or student teachers and stuff like that. So actually having middle school math and science both using reflective journaling has been really difficult to find research for. However, through this I've actually found a lot of really cool interactive journaling things that I can do to better incorporate all types of writing across the curriculum and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to use that in my classroom and not just reflective journaling.
Good.
So I'm looking at active learning in the classroom, so kind of like Maggie was saying, there's a lot of different words you can use to describe active learning, like discovery or inquiry, so I'll have to kind of narrow down more specifically what I want to look at with active learning, but I want to compare it to see how it affects students' attitudes towards science, and how their achievement is affected by that from test scores or looking at different content. And this kind of came from my learning assistant position with Dr. Underwood, and we've done this content exam kind of where you look, it's not asking you specific facts, but if you can just think scientifically. So I kind of want to develop a test that would be able to be used for junior high or high school science and see if the kids have those skills, kind of like the ACT science section where you're able to look at an experiment or a graph and figure out what's going on, not necessarily that you remember facts about anatomy or biology. So see how the active learning will kind of affect students' attitudes towards those different areas.
Good. Thanks.
I'm looking at motivation. Dr. Neal and I came up with a really good methodology where I'm going to give a weekly quiz, and at the end of the quiz have some form of a quote or something about success in life, or just through my research I've learned a lot of stuff about how people have become successful in their own lives, and that's what's been interesting to me. So I'm going to see if having them read that and reflect on it at the end of their quiz makes an impact on how they see their efforts in school. So then at the end I would have a survey. So that's what I'm doing.
be interesting digging up the different quotes that you're going to get.
Most of my research has been more like teaching me successful things about life, so I think that that's the help I needed, basically.
Yeah, good.
Mine is just kind of like seeing what types of real world problems like are most relevant to my students, like how they view relevance basically, and the real world problems I'm gonna give them like, I don't know, construction problems, sports problems, and basically just ask their opinion, like what did you think about this problem? Like did it relate to what we're learning? Like just basically their opinions of them, just to see what types of real world problems they like. And like, you know, some problems are like, you can tell it's like math just kind of covered up with a story problem or whatever, and then others are like actually like real world. So I might give some of those and just kind of see if they notice the difference, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had the same problem as like those two, like finding, because relevance, like other people are like calling it like the importance of like real world problems, or they're using different words for real world. So it's just been really hard to kind of like figure out exactly what they're talking about or what to like search for, I guess, just because there's so many different ways to phrase it.
Yeah, because textbooks are notorious for taking an arithmetic question and just wrapping some words around it.
Yeah.
Rather than really giving a real world word problem that you've got to figure out what to do.
Yeah,
with.
that's what one of the articles I read said. It was like a perfectly phrased question about like pink cans or I don't know, money like isn't going to show the students like anything. Like you have to, it actually has to be like a real world problem. Like you can't just disguise the math with paint cans or whatever.
Exactly. Megan can paint a room in 3 hours, and Rachel can paint the same room in 4 hours.
Yeah.
How long will it take them to work? Who cares?
Yeah,
Seriously.
exactly.
And if the two of you are working together, you're probably going to be goofing off talking to each other. It'll take you longer than anybody would individually. So, yeah. And starting to define what does a real world problem mean as opposed to one that's really contrived, which is numbers in it.
Yeah, and that's what they also says. Like sometimes like you, because I know when we were learning about, I don't remember, it was gravity or something, like you exempt like wind resistance and stuff. Like you just forget that real world factor. So that's like another thing in it.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's it.
I'm looking at journals in the math classroom. Overall, with my research, it's shown that writing in the math does increase the depth of the understanding and conceptual understanding, but I haven't found a whole lot of research on what students think of it. There was one article I found, it was an action research project, and it was in high school though, but the students were constantly complaining that they hated journal writing and they didn't want to do it anymore. But then they were given a survey where they got to say what they thought of it and were given the choice if they wanted to continue or not. And they all said that they liked it because it made them think and understand things better and chose to continue. So it's interesting to think, what do students actually think of it?
Good.
So for the first couple of weeks of my experiment, I'm having like students take their own notes based off the lesson, and then the next couple of weeks have them where they're just listening to me, and then I'll give them the notes at the end of the class, so they're not like busy writing it, and they can listen to me as well. And what I'm going to do is like assess the first couple of weeks and assess the second couple of weeks, and kind of view their assessment scores. And something interesting is that there's like a lot of variations to this. Like I can give fill in the blank, or give them some notes and they take their own notes as well. I don't think I'm going to have enough time to experiment with that, so I might just leave that out. And as of now, I still don't know what kind of assessments I use.
Thanks, Rita.
So I'm doing like different types of assessments, so rather than just like a written test. And I found a lot, but one that seems to be really like common is portfolios. And then, okay, no, this is really cool, I found this. So instead of like if you give like a multiple choice test, instead of doing like the number right scoring where you just like it's wrong or it's right, where you can give like partial credit, so it's easier for like you can see where your students are misunderstanding things or like don't fully get a concept, and then you can see like what they do get and what they don't. But you like, instead of just putting down like circling the right answer, they can put like, I'm not sure if this is it, or like I know that this isn't it, and then they can put like I know it's right, and it like gives them credit for the ones that like if they know it's wrong and it's wrong, then they get credit for that. So I think that's really cool. I was really excited when I found that.
That's pretty clever. Thanks. Lauren?
I'm working with exit tickets and kind of students' opinions on them and their value and kind of the advantages to reflecting on what you've learned throughout the day and actually like acknowledging what you learned, thinking about it. And what I found kind of interesting is I haven't found a lot of resources on it, and I haven't really found anything with like students' opinions, but I think it might be, again, like the terms, like exit ticket is a very specific term, so I might want to look more under like assessment or something like that. So maybe if I widen my search a little bit.
Yeah, because people use different terms for the same thing.
I'm working with technology in specific, the TI-83 as well as like online GeoGebra to develop understanding with different mathematical concepts. And one of the things that I've found most interesting is a lot of times, especially with the 83, it seems like students don't know how to use it, and so that's where they don't understand the technology, and so that's hindering the lessons. And most of the time is spent is teaching them how to use the technology instead of using the technology to enhance their lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, and a big part of that is having some continuity between one grade level and another. So once you teach them how to use it, the teacher's going to use it next year.
A lot of times I've been finding it's only in upper classrooms,
Yeah.
and it's not in elementary or anything else.
It's amazing, isn't it? I can't even imagine teaching algebra or geometry without a graphic calculator. I can't even picture it anymore. It's, but yeah, some people believe that they shouldn't be doing that. And it's silly because the Common Core calls for it. We've had graphing calculators in schools for 30 years now, and they still don't do it. Oh, enough said. I'll be anxious to see how it comes out. Brittany?
So my research question is looking at if teaching multiple strategies to solve problems enhances students' mathematical self-efficacy. So if by showing them all these strategies, are they going to be more confident in their abilities? Not necessarily their scores are going to go up, but they're going to feel more confident in their abilities to do math, and they're going to like math and want to actually try, I guess, in the past.
So I'm working with students like attributions, how they attribute their successes and failures. So my game plan is kind of to give, I know with math you don't really do a multiple choice test very often, but for like the purpose of like the study, I would give a multiple choice exam and then have the students, once it's graded, go back through and write why they missed each one or why they got each one wrong. So like either I don't remember learning this, I didn't study, this question's really hard or something like that. And then go through, after that, kind of do like an intervention and go through and explain why each one is the correct answer, and show that it really is a fair test, and if like everyone missed one problem, like throw it out and like show them that I'm doing it as fair as possible. And then on the next test, give them like the same type of format and have them go through again and see if how they're attributing it is differently. And so essentially the idea is to get the students to internalize their attributions, like I didn't know this one, I didn't study enough for this, not the teacher made this too hard, she didn't teach me this. And kind of show that the test is fair and kind of putting it on them to see that like their learning and their grades are like based on them. And I guess what I figured out once I'm doing all the research is all my research does the same thing, and it's basically just like describing attribution theory. So it's a lot harder to find studies that talk about like an intervention or something like that.
Good, thanks.
Yeah.
Christy's up.
Hey guys. I am actually looking at the use of realistic mathematics in how it affects self-efficacy, and it's been really interesting because I've done a lot of research and found a lot of stuff on realistic mathematics and a lot of things, but they haven't really put the two of them together. And I actually got a job. I'm co-teaching in a 5th grade math and science classroom. And after being there for 2 days, like I could totally redesign my project and look at like participation when you use realistic instead of self-efficacy, and I think it would be very, very applicable. So I guess I'm gonna kind of see where I end up if I can find some more research looking at participation instead of self-efficacy when using realistic mathematics. I guess I'll see where I go from there.
Thanks, Christy. I don't know if can you guys all hear her okay, Elizabeth? One of the things Christy said that was really important is she's in a 5th grade classroom, And just having been in that 5th grade classroom for 2 days, she's already rethinking what she wants to do her project on. That's exactly